Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
Let me tell you about my dog.
Hello
man.
and welcome to another edition of the Human and Animal Wellbeing Podcast by CARE, Amped by the Block Gives Back. I am your host, Hakeem Ruiz, and I'm here with our new guest, Daniel Shaw. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Very glad to have you. So, Daniel, you're coming out of Bowling Green, Kentucky right now, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So, our friend Akeisha has set us up with making your acquaintance. Very glad to have you here. And from what I understand, your story starts in England, right?
My mother's side of the family is British, and believe it or not, I was actually born in Washington D.C. and from there went to the UK. So,
Oh, wow. Can you take us through those steps of how that worked out in your early years?
okay, so I was born in Washington D.C. My mother suffered from; she was developmentally disabled. So when I was born, she was unfortunately it was determined that she couldn't take care of her child, so I was taken away from her. And from there, I went into a couple of foster homes. And when I was about 2 years old, I was taken to the UK. I didn't know. I'm 2 years old. I don't know what's going on. So I mean, and then from there, I spent a couple months in the UK, and then I came back, and I was adopted. From there, I moved to. I was adopted by a family in Virginia, and that
How
home.
old were you around that time? I'm sorry to cut you off, but how old were you when you were adopted by the family in Virginia?
About 3 years old.
Okay, so
So
this is all not barely in memory to you. This is more so
yeah,
being what's told to you, right?
correct. So at about 10 years old, from what I remember, I was sent back to the UK over a summer, and I stayed with some people. And what I didn't know is it was my aunt and uncle, my biological aunt and uncle, and I didn't know that. I wasn't told that until I got older, just several years back, actually. But I got to grow up in Virginia and in the Stafford Fredericksburg area. Bounced from foster home to foster home throughout my childhood. 19
I would
foster
imagine
homes.
that experience, that those 19 foster homes probably taught you a lot of things, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, it taught me a lot about parenting, dealing with kids, coping mechanisms, dealing with high stress situations, and how to manage those, and how to. We all go through bad stuff in life. Okay, it's just part of the life design. I look at it as I always like to say that they're tests. We're being tested just to see how we're going to, whether we're going to pass or we're going to fail. In my case, I passed because I never gave up. There were some pretty bad times, and I could have. But for me, I always say I want to see how the story ends, if that makes sense. I want to see how the book ends, like the book of my life. So that's what's kept me going. I've had a lot of support growing up from foster parents and social workers and family members. So today I am the person I am today because of the experiences I've had.
Right. A lot of good relationships, a lot of building of character throughout that time, I'm sure, right?
Yes.
Can we speak about some more positive influences that I know you've been connected with, which are Akeisha and John Alma? Can you speak about how you came across meeting them?
All right. So part of my life is last year was not too happy for me. It started out happy, and then towards the middle, it started to go downhill. It happens to the best of us. My identity was stolen, and they stole everything from me. At the time, I was a deputy, and because of that, I fell behind on my rent, fell behind on my car payment. It couldn't pay my bills. It could barely feed my dogs or myself. And over the months, I just never gave up. I kept telling myself, keep going, don't give up. It's going to get better. You're going to get back on your feet. And about 2.5 months ago, I went to a place called First Christian Church. It's a food pantry in Bowling Green. And I went there to get food. And I met John Elma. That's her name, right?
Yes.
I met her there, and she told me about because we started talking about politics, and you had mentioned my political run, and we'll get into that later. But we started talking about that while I was trying to get food, and she mentioned an event that was going on that Saturday, and she would really, really love for me to show up with my dogs. Well, I took a chance and put the dogs in the car and drove down to her church, and they were serving the homeless food. And that's one thing I love doing events like that, giving back. I may not be able to help myself, but I can at least help somebody else.
Absolutely, and that's a big key. I'm sure with you putting others first, at times there are times where you need some support. So I'm going to lean into what I just seen behind you, your dogs there. You mentioned your dogs in the previous statement. Can you tell us a little bit about your dogs? I believe you have 3 of them.
I have 3 dogs and a cat.
I need names, bios. Tell us everything there is to know about these cool cats.
All right, so it actually started. One of my dogs passed away back in 2021. And I got the first one behind me. I'm going to introduce my dog that passed away. His name was Percy Jackson. I moved into a house, and when I opened the door, he was sitting there in the middle of an empty house with no furniture, and his food and water bowl were empty. And I remember calling the landlord, and I said, "Hey, Carl, his name was Percy Jackson, but we called him Jack." I said, "Jack is here in the house, and he's all by himself, and he's got no food. And are you going to come pick him up?" He said, "Nope. He's your dog now. You need to get him registered." So that's how I wound up with my first dog. One thing I noticed about Jack is he suffered from separation anxiety. So when I would go to work, I would fill his food and water bowl up so he could eat. And I would come home, and he hadn't touched his food or water.
Oh, wow. So he needed you to be there for
Mhm.
him to feel comfortable eating.
Yes. So I went to a vet, and I mentioned this because it was bothering me. I was like, I don't want him to lose weight or, get sick. So she suggested that I get him a playmate. So December 30th, 2017, I went to a mall in Virginia Beach, and a place called Petland, I believe. I called them first because Jack was a boxer. So I fell in love with the breed boxer because of Jack. So I called the store up and I said, "I'm looking for a boxer puppy." I've called 3 other stores. Nobody has one. Please tell me you have a boxer puppy. And they said, "Yeah, we have a female boxer puppy." I said, "Really? I am on my way." She said, "Well, I can send you pictures and you can decide whether you want this dog or not." And I'd already made my mind up I was going to get her. I didn't care what the cost was. So, but they sent me pictures, and I fell even more in love with her before I met her. And I brought Jack with me, and they immediately started playing. So I spent over $2,000 on her, and it was worth every penny. Her name is Athena Clarice. I named her Athena after the Greek goddess of wisdom and war, and Clarice after the daughter of Ares. She's also known as the scion of war in Greek mythology. So I'm a mythology nerd. Sorry.
If I'm not mistaken, Percy Jackson is a mythology book character, right?
He's fictional. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think I read that book once. That name sounded very familiar.
They came out with the movies too. So I've read all the books. I own the movies, but I've always been into Greek mythology and mythology in general. So when I got her, I named her Athena because she came right up to me and she immediately licked my hand. She didn't even sniff me. She just, and she kind of jumped up on my leg, like picked me up. So, and this is within the first 2 minutes of meeting her. So I named her Athena because of her intelligence. About, let's see, Jack was getting older and couldn't play as much, as hard as he did when I first got her. So about 2 years later, year and a half later, I noticed Athena just doing a lot of sleeping, a lot of just cuddling with Jack and not playing. And keep in mind, she's like a year old, okay, like maybe almost 2 years old. And so I went to another pet store, and this one was also in the area. It was in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I walked in, and the guy at the store was holding this boxer puppy, and I once again boxer guy. So I saw her, and I was like, "Can I hold her? Sorry, can I hold her?" And he let me hold her, and she was all wrinkly. She was like a few months old, and I'd never seen a boxer with wrinkles before, so I fell in love. And that leads me to the second one behind me, Persephone. Persephone is named after the Greek goddess of spring, and she's also the wife of Hades, the queen, god of the underworld. So she's queen of the underworld in mythology. And I got her March 28th, which was the beginning of spring. So she is 4 years old now. Oh, by the way, Athena is 5. She's 4. And then my youngest just turned 2.
Can you speak on how that worked out as far as I heard you say you adopted, I believe, all 3 of them in Virginia. Did your partner have any issues with that, with the pets? Was it a good relationship altogether with the pets?
When I got Persephone, Athena, and Hades, my third one's name is Hades. And when I got all 3 of them, I was still single. I had just gone through a divorce, and I kind of, how when a lot of ladies get older, they tend to collect cats.
That's a thing, so they say.
I kind of went through that midlife crisis early at a young age, and I collected dogs instead. So, so no one really had a problem with it. Everybody fell in love with them right away. I got them training, at least Athena and Persephone. I sent them away. I sent Athena away for a month to a place called Blue Sky Farms in Chesapeake, Virginia. It's an actual farm. And I sent Persephone away for, it would have been a month, but she's stubborn. And it doesn't take direction well. So she had to stay there for an extra 2 weeks. But Athena and Persephone have both been trained. Obedience training, whether that's stuck with them over the years, that's a different story.
So you mentioned also that you have a cat within your collection.
Yes.
So I've also been told that you are a caretaker of cats. With that love of dogs, I feel like it's not always normal, or not always the expectation that people are going to, have the mutual love for cats and dogs. So how did you get into being a cat caretaker?
Okay, so when I was living in Chesapeake, Virginia, of course, I had 3 dogs at the time. And I remember sitting on the couch one night, and my kitchen door back door had a doggy door. And one of the dogs ripped the little flap off, so it was just a big hole. And I'm sitting there watching TV, and all of a sudden something moved and caught my eye. It was a cat came in through the doggy door while all 3 of my dogs were asleep and started eating their food and drinking their water. and they were just knocked out. They didn't even know the cat was there. So uh, next thing I know, probably summer 2021, the dogs were outside in the backyard, and I had one of those big bay garage structures, and next to it was just a pile of junk that my landlord's son and daughter-in-law had left behind, and it was like wood rot and stuff like that. And one day, Athena and Persephone were just out there going crazy, and I came out, and I thought maybe they were barking at a squirrel or a rabbit or something, come out and leave that thing alone, get away from there. And I came out, and I looked next to the garage, and this little head popped up out of the junk. And then another little head popped up, and then another. So 3 little heads popped up, and they were kittens, newborn kittens. So I was like, oh my God, well, it's getting ready to storm. And, I understand that they, were born outside, but I don't want them to get sick or whatnot. So I wound up going to IKEA and getting a plastic tote. And by this time I was dating, and I don't do well with cat scratches. I'm a little wuss when it comes to that. So I told my partner, I said, go get them. And my partner went and got 3. There were actually 4, but 1 got away with the mom. So now I've got these 3 little newborn kittens sitting in my house in this little tote, cuddled together because they were scared. And I found homes for 2 of them. I found homes for Cleopatra and Archimedes, which, by the way, I named them myself.
How did you go about finding those homes for them? Were you just involved throughout the community, or did people pay attention to this work you were doing with these kittens?
I put the word out among my friends. My ex took one of them, took the boy, and then that left Cleopatra and Phobia. And my tattoo artist lived in my neighborhood, and he came by and he saw Cleopatra, and he was like, "Oh, dude, I want that one. Can I have that one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't want to separate them because I know what it's like to be split up from your siblings, but I couldn't keep 3 kittens, so I couldn't have 6 animals. So I went ahead and let Jay keep Cleopatra, and then I tried to find a home for Phobia, and just no one wanted her. So now she's running around here somewhere, hiding under something. So
Hey, that means she was a loyal member of the family. It was meant to be where she was sticking with you.
well, it's actually funny because my dogs have, since moving to Kentucky, my dogs have kind of formed a pack, and she's part of that pack. They have accepted her into that pack. So I've never seen a cat be accepted into a pack of dogs before. So it's actually kind of funny and cool. So
Hey, you have a cat that's half boxer now.
oh no, right?
So you mentioned you would have had 6 animals to move around with. I'm sure even with the 4 that you do have, there has to be some difficulties and struggles. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced with being an owner of 4 pets?
Okay, so when my luck got really, really bad over last summer, when I went through the identity theft and whatnot, and I was having trouble buying food for myself and paying my bills and whatnot. One thing I did do was I made sure that whatever money I did have, I spent on pet food. For me, I could care less if I didn't eat, but I wasn't going to let my misfortune. I wasn't going to let them suffer for my misfortune. I was going to do everything I could to take care of them, make sure they were healthy and happy. And like I said, if that means I didn't eat, then I didn't eat. They have to eat. Sorry. And so dealing with that, I've never had to deal with that before, but I just kept going. And the move from Virginia to Kentucky, Um, no one told me that cats didn't like cars. Um, so a 12-hour trip
And wow, 12
um,
hours of dealing with
w-
learning that.
with a under a year old kitten screaming for about 9 hours straight. And then finally, my adopted mother saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to tell you, cats don't like cars." I was like, "You couldn't have told me that 9 hours ago." Um, but all she wanted was out of the carrying case, and um, when I let her out of the carrier, all she did was go into the back of my SUV and curl up with the dogs and fall asleep. So, um, but being a pet owner, a lot of times you worry about vet bills and paying for food and, heartworm, flea tick treatment, things like that. And it's a lot. But
Now, may I ask you, is this something that you knew of before you had Jax? Were you aware that these expenses come along with owning a dog, or is this something that you uncovered over time?
no, this is something I uncovered over time because, like, Jack was my very first dog. I'd never had a dog of my own before. So, growing up, I had family dogs, but I wasn't the one that paid. I was a kid. I didn't pay for them. So, I mean, um, so Percy Jackson was my very first dog. And I learned very quickly with him that you've got to do the heartworm, flea and tick medication. You've got to take them to the vets and get their shots. You've got to buy dog food and dog shampoo and leashes and toys, and it's just like having a kid, a human
And
kid.
training, as you mentioned too.
And well, lucky for me with Jack, Jack was already trained. The landlord had already trained him, so I didn't have to do that part. But the dog food and all the toys and all the other stuff, it was like, whoa, when does it stop? But it's totally worth it. I get to come home every day from work and see this awesome creature that's happy to see me walk in the door. So for me, it's just totally worth it. I try not to really think about it because to me it doesn't matter. So I have four amazing kids. So I
Hmm.
mean,
But I understand the love doesn't just stop there with your pets. I was told that you were also a youth counselor previously.
I was. I'm back in 2013. My next door neighbor Ian, may rest in peace, but him and a couple friends were involved in a haunted house, and it was a full contact haunted house. I don't know how you feel about haunted houses, but this is one of those ones where they could touch you and grab you. Yeah. So, but Ian came up to me one afternoon. He said, "Why don't you come with me and have some fun? Scaring people." I said, "Okay." So,
Tons of fun.
yeah. So I went and got all bloodied up and everything at the haunted house and spent the night scaring people. And I noticed my first night that a lot of the actors were really, really young. They ranged from 5 years old to, 40 years old. So um, as time went on, I started to do it every year. And I had the organizer come to me one time and she said, "Hey, I've got this kid here. He needs some mentoring. Would you be interested in doing it?" And I said, "Sure." So this was a kid that came from a broken home, and which I can relate to, growing up as a foster kid. And he had no one to talk to, so he was acting out to try to get attention. Um, he kept trying to ask people for help, but they weren't listening. So he came to the haunted house one night, and he seemed upset, and it just started from there. I started having other teens come to me with their problems and just talking to me and me giving advice. And I wasn't the only one that was doing this. The other adult staff members were also doing this with the teens, because this haunted house took place in like Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia. And if you know anything about those areas, drugs and gangs are real bad there. And drugs and gangs have gotten into the schools. So a lot of times the youth will join a gang as early as 10 years old, if not younger. And this haunted house was not only a haunted house, but it doubled as a youth outreach program.
It created an opportunity for you to engage with them directly and not have a too formal of a setting, I would assume.
Right. It also gave them a way to get away from the drugs and the negative influences of like gangs and stuff like that, and gave them a place where they could be around peers their own age and peers, adults as well. That it was a no judgment zone. There we were all family. If you had a problem, come to me. I've got no judgment. I'm going to do everything in my power to try to help you. I'm not going to steer you in the wrong direction. So, just come on, have some fun. If you've got any problems, we'll work those out while you're here as well. So, I, of course, being in Bowling Green, am no longer part of Spooky Acres Haunted House in Portsmouth, Virginia, but I still keep in contact with the teenagers through Facebook, and they're always messaging me, talking about their problems, and even here from Kentucky, I'm still trying to do my part to help them out.
So within your role in Kentucky, I was told you took a position trying to run for public office. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the grounds of wanting to get into that realm was about?
Well, I grew up as foster kids, so I've always been involved with the criminal justice system. And I, over last summer, when my luck started to go bad, I was working as a deputy at Warren County Regional Jail. So I was deputy jailer. And part of my bad luck was I got let go during my probationary period. And I saw things in that jail that just broke my heart. I understand that it's a jail and it's for people who have broken the law. But if you think about it, criminals are still humans. And they don't necessarily, they shouldn't be treated like animals. They're humans. Okay. They're humans that made some really bad choices. Okay. That doesn't, giving somebody a moldy peanut butter sandwich or a moldy meat sandwich and a bag of chips for dinner, for me, that's inhumane. Allowing them one little cup of water or 3 cups of water a day, that's inhumane to me. So I decided to run against the guy that let me go from the jail, the jailer. I was like, fine, if you're going to get rid of me, I'll just take your job. So, but no, I ran because I saw these things inside the jail, and I wanted to change them. I, of course, did not win, but I am currently a deputy again in Simpson County, Kentucky, which is the next county over.
Congratulations on receiving that role.
Thank you. I'm a sworn law enforcement agent in the state of Kentucky, so that also comes with all the terrifying training, the tasing, the OC spraying, all that nice stuff. Yes, I've had it done. It's not pleasant.
So just going through your tale, I'm learning so much already through the foster care system into your time of, having some displacement time in the Army and now as a deputy. There's a lot of trauma to be had there, but also you mentioned early on you learned a lot of coping and the ways to cope. Can you speak about some of the things that you do now that helps you just, get a better grasp on what's going on in the day-to-day and staying optimistic?
Music, believe it or not. I know a lot of people say that, but it's very true. I sing. I'm not much of a writer, but I love singing. And I, at one point, was a vocal student at a place called the School of Rock. And yes, it's a real place. It's not just a movie. The movie was actually inspired by the actual school. I was a vocal student there. So, I mean, for me, when things are getting the hardest for me, music always is a way to cope with that stress, and then just leaning on my dogs, on my pets for support when I'm upset or whatnot. That's another coping mechanism. I mean, I couldn't make it through my day without seeing their faces. If I came home, to an empty apartment and I wasn't able to see their faces, I'd be heartbroken. So,
And I wanted to speak on the prioritization you have of that. So I know that you struggle with some housing situations due to having to sacrifice for making sure you have your dogs with you. Can you speak about some of the restrictions that you faced or some of the issues that you've come across just with being a pet owner and looking for housing?
um, when I moved from Virginia, when I was looking to move from Virginia to Kentucky, um, I had to find an apartment complex or rent a landlord that would allow pets. Not everyone is pet friendly. Um, even Athena and Persephone are actually registered TESAs. I don't know if you know what that means.
Please educate me.
Therapeutic emotional support animals. They're in the same category as service animals. You've got your ESAs, which are emotional support animals, but a therapeutic emotional support animal falls in the same category as a service animal because they are trained to handle high stress situations and deal with them. So when I was looking for an apartment here in Kentucky, I got turned down like 10 times. It was, you have too many pets. Our limit is two, and you have three. I'll be honest, I didn't tell them about the cat, but uh, but
May I ask also, Daniel, do you think there were any other factors that went into them determining that? Were there any other things that may have put their decision, to not accept you?
um, I, a lot of places have breed restrictions, like Rottweilers, Doberman Pinschers, Pit Bulls, things like that. They're restricted because of they're considered a vicious breed. A couple of those places put boxers on that list, which I think is stupid because boxers are some of the gentlest, one of the gentlest breeds I've ever come across. They love people, they love children, they're highly protective. But I think breed also had something to do with that. So
Yes, and with those breeds, you said you love boxers, so clearly you're not gonna, change that route. Also, having to not even mention the cats, I'm sure that's a struggle. Have you seen that there's just a big difference as far as the rental units? I know the availability usually tends to be within these rental units, apartment complex, and everything of that nature. Are these places that are opening their doors to you, or does it seem like they're just continuing to have that red tape there?
the current place I live at a place called the Drake Apartments. I'm actually only as far as rent goes, I'm only responsible for Hades because Athena and Persephone fall under the ADA of 1992, and considered service animals. Financially, I don't have to have them on my rent. But here at the Drake, they love my dogs. They're absolutely in love with my dogs. My dogs are highly intelligent. They figured out how to not only unlock my apartment door, but how to open it and get loose. So, and this is while I'm at work. So I get a call from the leasing office. We're chasing your dogs around the apartment complex uh, while I'm at work. um, they even had to change the doorknobs to make them the round doorknobs instead of the lever.
Dog proof.
Yeah, they had to dog proof my apartment. But no, here at the Drake, they're open arms. I mean, they go above and beyond for their pet owners. Um, I've spoken to other apartment complexes, and they're not so much open arms. They're not as open arms. So that's what I like about the Drake is they're pet owners themselves, and um, they even have little community events here where it's like bring your pet to the clubhouse for like a party type thing. So
We
I've
love
been to
that.
a couple of
It sounds like
no,
Yeah, it sounds like they want to continue to make sure that you're involved and not just being pushed away. There's a comfortability that they're allowing there. I love that. So I wanted to wrap this up with one last question. I hope you could take your time and give us your thoughts on this. I want to say a statement and you tell me what you think of it. And it is animal welfare versus human and animal well-being. If I had to say, what are the differences between those statements? What do you think?
I think animal welfare is making sure an animal has everything they need to live a happy, healthy life. When I think of animal welfare, a lot of times finding the right home, having somebody that's going to give an animal their forever home instead of getting the animal and then taking them back 2 weeks later. You know what I mean? And the other, repeat the other part for me. I'm sorry.
And the other statement is human and animal well-being versus animal welfare.
Yeah, the first part is just making sure the animal has everything to live a happy and healthy life. And the second part is, I think, like for me, I lean on my animals for support and they lean on me. When they're upset, I'm there. When I'm upset, they're there. What they can't give me in food, they give me in other things. So, I mean,
it's a ton of love there, I'm sure.
Yeah. But, knowing that when I walk through the door, they're happy to see me, no matter, what is going on in life. I think every human should have a pet. Well, not every human. Some people should not be pet owners. But, I mean,
I would like to finish on that right there, Daniel. If you could, to the people who don't have pets, can you give a statement of just why they would want to, go into this journey of having a couple of dogs, maybe one cat, whatever it is, but can you just speak to why they should want to, embrace this lifestyle of having a companion with them?
Pets love unconditionally. They are going to do everything in their power to make you happy. They're going to do everything in their power to love you. I think everybody needs love. I think everybody needs a companion. So you might not have a human companion, but I think if you can't have a human companion, have an animal companion, because sometimes they're even better. Like I said, I can't picture my life without mine. They are my companion. Whether I'm single or not, I'm sorry, if I'm in a relationship, my animals come first. Sorry. They were there before you, and they will be there probably long after you. So, yeah, they're there for emotional support and happy memories and, get you through the tough times. And that's all I can really say. I
couldn't agree with you more. As you said, everyone needs love. And I think we loved having you on this podcast, Daniel. We're hoping the best for you and the family of dogs over there and the cat. We don't want to forget. So on behalf of CARE and the Human and Animal Wellbeing Podcast, I wanted to thank you again. We're signing off. I'm Hakeem Ruiz, and we hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Hold me down in these streets, that's my dog. Walking down the block to the shop with my dog. I can never put him down, that's my dog. Watch what you say, I don't play by my dog. That's my best friend, that's my dog. He gon' always hold me down, that's my dog. That's my best friend, that's my dog. He gon' always hold me down, that's my dog.